was a boy. He lived with his mom, dad, and little sister. Dad sometimes told me that his ancestors were nomads and once upon a time lived in the desert. And Grandpa could even tell you how to find water in the sand and take care of a camel. Do you remember Grandpa? Dad asked. We went to see him once. I don't remember, the boy replied. But in fact, the boy remembered the old man very well, who looked like a dangerous bird of prey and remembered his eyes like two pieces of dark ice. The boy was so scared then that he would have run away, but his legs froze like a stone and he could not move from his place. And Grandpa laughed out loud and said that such a child would not be able to survive in the desert. And he no longer paid attention to the boy. But the grandmother turned out to be very kind. She took the boy to the kitchen, treated him to some sweets and gave him a talisman, a bag with a stork embroidered on it. Don't show it to anyone, Grandma warned, not even Dad and Mom, otherwise it will stop working. What's in there? The boy asked his grandmother, trying to feel with his fingers what is inside the bag. Chalk and ashes, Grandma replied. And then she told the boy a story about ancient demons living in the desert who crept up on sleeping people in the dark, strangled them and drank all the blood out of them. When these people were found in the morning, they looked like dry mummies, said Grandma. Then my grandmother told me how the inhabitants of the desert deceived the demons of the desert. They took small round stones, sprinkled them with white chalk and drew black dots with ash so that the stones looked like eyes. Human eyes are a treat for the demons of the desert, Grandma said, like sweets for you. But after eating the stones, the demons of the desert could not fly and people could catch and kill them. Is it possible to kill demons? The boy asked. Not for long, Grandma replied. People will live 3 terms during this time. The boy didn't really believe in fairy tales, but he liked his grandmother's story, and the talisman, even though the boy later lost it somewhere. The boy never saw his grandfather again, and then someone called Dad and said that Grandpa was dying. And the boy's dad went to his grandfather, and at night the boy had a dream. He suddenly found himself in the desert and a demon was chasing him. Of course, the boy could not see the demon himself, but it seemed to him that someone's invisible eyes, cold as ice, were watching him. The boy had never met the demons of the desert, but this look seemed familiar to him. The boy ran for a long time, but when he collapsed into the sand, he still felt the demon's gaze. The boy wanted to cry, but under the scorching sun, the tears dried up before they appeared. Human eyes are a treat for the demons of the desert. Suddenly, as if in reality, the boy heard his grandmother's voice. And as it often happens in a dream, he suddenly realized that he was clutching a talisman in his hand all the time, a bag with a stork embroidered on it. The pouch was sewn up, but when the boy pulled harder, the threads in the upper part of the pouch immediately broke. There were 2 compartments in the bag, in one there was white chalk dust. In the other there was black ash. Right there, among the sand, the boy found many small round stones. He sprinkled the stones with white chalk and drew black dots with ash, so that the stones looked like eyes. Then he laid out the stones in a pyramid and lay down next to them, closing his eyes. He was so tired that he fell asleep from exhaustion, but he was so afraid that he couldn't sleep. With his eyes closed, the boy lay on the hot sand and heard the wind humming and the sound of crumbling sand. The boy tried to remember at least some prayers, but could not remember any. He remembered his house, his dad and mom, but he couldn't remember anything, as if all his memories were covered in sand. And then something touched him, and with a scream, the boy jumped to his feet. "Quiet," said the man standing in front of him. "That's it." He was short and wrapped in rags all over, even his face, only the eyes were open, and that gaze was studying the boy closely. "You acted correctly and flawlessly," the man said, and even from the hoarse voice of the stranger, the boy could not determine who was in front of him, a man or a woman, a child or an old man. Sometimes they become so strong that they can live in a human body, the unknown continued. And when one body dies, they move into another, more often into the bodies of their human descendants. It's easier to do that. They are not easy to catch, because they are vulnerable only at the moment of transition from one body to another. The man took a step forward and handed the boy a strange rounded object. "This is a dry pumpkin," said the man. "The people of the desert carry water in it." The boy took the pumpkin. "You are a worthy son of the desert people. When you're really dying, we'll meet you here and bury your bones in the sand. But your great-grandchildren will have to meet him again, and you will be waiting for them here." To help, the man turned his back and walked away. When the boy woke up, there was a dry pumpkin in his hand, and the bed was full of dry yellow sand, and only then did the boy realize that he was reminded of the gaze of the invisible demon of the desert that was chasing him. His grandfather had the same icy